Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Nikki.
Hi, Pete.
It's a happy day.
It's a happy day.
Any podcast day is a happy day, Nikki.
It is. I agree.
Yeah. We're talking about, this is part 4 of the organizing steps. We do have some more organizing to talk about, but this is the big part 4 today, and that is maintenance. I'm very excited about maintenance. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm actually not.
I was going to say, there was
I'm not excited at all about maintenance.
No enthusiasm in that at all.
It totally stresses me out.
Thank you for being honest.
It stresses me out. I'm genuinely terrible at it, and I look at things, it's like things are fermenting in my closet. You know, it was once organized, so now I'm hoping you'll give me some solid guidance on straightening my action up.
Yes.
Before we do that, head over to takecontroladhd.com. You can get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list, and we'll send you an email each time a new episode is released. You can connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD. Okay. I have a little bit of follow-up. May I, if I may?
Well, of course you may, because this is a technology question.
It is.
Follow-up.
It is a technology question, and it's sort of related to our announcement. Maybe we should do that first. The Women's Palooza is the last. We're not talking about that?
No,
by the time this goes live.
You got it.
All right. Well, the reason I bring it up is because we talk about this specifically. I think we actually mentioned this related to password security in our presentation.
Yes.
At Women's Palooza. And if you see that, this is pre-follow-up for any questions that come out of that, and post-follow-up to a conversation we had related to big password breaches some weeks back. And that is haveibeenpwned.com. I don't think I made a very good case for why you should use haveibeenpwned.com and the background of that site, because it has kind of a strange URL, and if you're not familiar with it in security circles, it's going to be a thing that maybe you don't know if you can trust, just because some Yahoo on a podcast, namely this guy, says you should go trust it. Should you trust it? And I want to be clear that this website is legit. It's run by a guy named Troy Hunt. Troy Hunt is a Microsoft MVP of the year. He is Microsoft Regional Director. Like he is a web security expert. That is of some renown in the industry of security on the web. And he spun up this website, haveibeenpwned.com, as a public service because he felt like there was just no sense of transparency in these data breaches. How do you know if the company themselves that has been breached, they aren't doing the work of telling you if your email address was involved in this thing, right? And so he puts this website together. Pwned is it's leet speak. It's like gamer speak for if I pwn you, it means I just like beat your base, right? In a game. I think we have gamers who are better equipped to explain that term. But in this case, it means does some nefarious actor have access to my credentials? Do they have access to my username and password? So all Troy does is take the publicly available breaches, the data from those breaches, like all the email addresses that have been released or all the passwords that have been released that are already out there in public, and he just puts a search engine in front of it. So you can go to this website and say, I'm going to enter my email address and just see what if my email address is involved in any hacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this information is already out there. Right? There's no other way for him to get it. The question is, do you trust Troy Hunt and, his credentials? I encourage you to check out his Wikipedia page. It is robust. It talks all about his background in the work. You have access to his speaking. Like he is a legit professional in this field, and the website is is a great resource, technically. You can do two things on it. You can enter your email address and not your password, right? You just enter your email address and say, is this out there? Or there's another section on the website where you can enter your password, which, unless you have a super secure password already, that is of less use. I think because your password might be security 123, and then you'll see, that password's involved in data breaches, but anybody's password is involved. The odds of you having the same password as somebody else, if you're not very good at passwords yet, it's pretty high. And so I think having email addresses, the question came in from a listener, how do we know if this site is legit? Don't just start entering your email and password into this website because it might be actually harvesting your data. Don't do that.
Right.
Well, all I can tell you is my experience has only gotten better since I've known about this site, since I've started using Have I Been Pwned. 1Password is a legit, software development company. They incorporate Have I Been Pwned into their back end. Like that's what Watchtower is doing, is it's checking the data breaches against Have I Been Pwned. So, I don't know how else to make the case apart from you have to decide if these people are legitimate yourself. Like if you just decide I'm not going to trust anybody, fine, but go change your passwords, right? That's keep your passwords changed. Then you have to be even more vigilant if you're not going to trust the sources out there that are telling you that you've been pwned, that your passwords have been released in a hack. Then you have to be even more vigilant if you're never going to actually look at the data. And that's a different kind of security. I prefer to have a service that's actually telling me what's available in public. So I don't know. Does that make sense? Have I answered the question?
It does make sense. And I'm just really glad that you answered it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
I think it's great.
All right. And my hope is that I am talking about this, that our gamer folks in the chat will jump over to Discord and maybe post their thoughts on what pwned means. So that's clear to everybody, because I know I did a terrible job of actually explaining that. And it's kind of a fun term. So, maybe that'll be something that can be done. So thanks in advance for that. The ADHD podcast is brought to you by you. The reason that Nikki and I can do this show every week, year after year, is thanks to the support of you, our listeners, at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. Your direct support pays for hosting the show and equipment, but it also, and even more importantly, it helps put food on our very table. So visit patreon.com/the ADHD podcast and support us today. We appreciate it. Now, what do you get? Well, this week, let's talk about workshops. If you subscribe and support the show at the supreme level, then you get access to the workshop library. And Nikki is posting her workshops. We are doing new workshops every month. These online videos that we're putting up around ADHD topics. We're taking suggestions. We are doing all kinds of work to help build that video library of resources, and that's something you get as a supporter. It's just one of the things that you get as a supporter of the ADHD podcast. You also get access to an incredible community of caring folks who live with ADHD and really want to support one another. The latest buzz in the Deluxe channel, apparently there was a pending engagement proposition at Disneyland over the Valentine's Day.
Right. And we're waiting to hear back, right?
Well, let me just, I don't even want to spoil it. I'll spoil it. It didn't happen, but it may someday down the road. And I just love that such drama took place over the weekend, and it was just really, really fun.
Oh, that's
It was
cool.
really fun at the chat room. So you get access to that and so much more. It is an incredible and warm place. So we really appreciate you giving it a shot. Patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. We appreciate your support today. Listener-supported podcasting. Back to the show. This is week 4 of our Organizing Space podcast series. We highly recommend, if you have not listened to the other 3 episodes, that you jump back in time 3 episodes and begin with step 1 so you'll know where we are.
Because this will make absolutely no sense to you if you are starting right now.
Truth.
Right?
Truth.
Yes.
We are talking about step 4, maintaining your space. Nikki, where would you like to start?
Well, I want to do just a quick review of the last 3 weeks because we have covered a lot of information and how we what we covered and how it led us to where we are today.
Yes.
So the first week we talked about planning, and that was really kind of deciding where to start, what the purpose is of our space. Second week, we were talking a lot about sorting, making decisions, what you're keeping, some of those roadblocks that keep us from making those decisions. Last week, we talked about organizing. So that was the actual placing your items back into your homes of, placing them back in a way that you can find them when you need them. Which leads us to step 4, which is maintaining. And Pete is over there shaking his head.
Why is maintaining? Can we just start there? Why is maintaining so challenging? Especially if you've for ADHD, this is the part that always just falls completely off the radar for me.
Well, you're not the only one. I remember actually a few years ago, I was working with a client who had ADHD and we were talking about organizing space, and there was one spot in his house that he was working on. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, we've gone through this process. You've helped me sort. You've helped me put things back. And he goes, I really think that the part that I've been missing is this step 4. I never think of maintaining my space. And it's sort of that thought that, well, once I do it, then it's going to stay that way, or it should stay that way. But we all know that it doesn't.
Right.
And even if you don't have ADHD, our spaces don't stay organized because we use our stuff. Yeah. And if you don't live by yourself and you live with other people, then you've got other people who are using your stuff and using their stuff, and things get misplaced and it just happens. Life happens. So
I get worked up emotionally about maintaining the space. I just look at a straight up bookshelf. I take a book off the shelf. I use it for reference for some period of time. And then sometimes, if I have bookshelves that might be a little deeper than usual, sometimes I'll just walk up to the bookshelf and I'll just set the book on the bookshelf. I won't take the extra microseconds to put the book up straight and slide it between the books where it was. I'll just set it on top. Either maybe it's on top of the books or on top of the bookshelf. I like that. To me, when I see that, when I know I do it, I go away and I come back and I look at the bookshelf and I realize the bookshelf is going to just fall apart if I just keep taking books out and putting them back stacked on top of one another. Why do I do that? That feels like something is broken inside of me.
I think it's a mindset. I think that you bring up a really good point. I think it's a mindset because as I'm listening to you describe that experience, unless your books are alphabetized or categorized in some strange way, does it really matter if it's vertical or horizontal?
Well, that's okay. That's a good question. I think it does matter from a space efficiency perspective, using the space. Because then the more I do it, the more I stack the book, then I have books that are both stacked and vertical and they're all on top of one another. Getting to the books next time I use them is more complicated. Keeping the space used most efficiently gets more complicated. There are practical reasons I can imagine doing that. I can imagine keeping, it's why I organize the space in the first place in some regards. So I think that, we're using books as an example,
right.
But when I look in my closet, which I can't show you because the camera is fixed, but when I look at my closet and the way it is deteriorated, it makes it harder to find the things I need when I need them that aren't books, when I have lived in this sort of state of maintenance disarray.
So that's the point, is that you need to be at a point. I mean, right, when we look at what does organizing mean, you want to find, or you want to be able to find what you need when you need it. So if you are coming to your bookshelf and you can't find what you need, then that's a red flag of it's probably time to straighten those books up. And take the time to maintain it. Yeah. My point is that if you can still find the book that you need because it happens to be just right there, then you're not, there's nothing wrong with your system. Mm-hmm. So I think it's setting up the expectation of what works for you. And if you can find what you need, then, it doesn't have to be efficient. It's just a matter of you finding what you need when you need it. But again, and I guess by definition, if I can find what I need when I need it, that is the definition of efficiency. Right. So it doesn't matter if they're horizontal or vertical or crisscross. applesauce.
I'm going to start doing
hanging.
crisscross.
Yeah. But the point is if you can't, like if you think that you have a book there and you don't, now you can't find it, then something might be in order for you to maintain. Like it might be time for you to do this. Yeah.
Let's get back to what you wanted to talk about today regarding maintenance and see how well it clears up my emotional disarray.
Well, this is the key because, we talked a little bit about mindset. Right. And I think that one of the things that I want people to think about, if you've gone through steps 1, 2, and 3, step 4 really doesn't have to be that hard or time consuming. Do you believe me?
Well, kinda. This is one of those things where I believe you because I've worked with you for so long. And so I know what you're saying is true, but I always say it like that. I know she's right.
Because you've already done the steps beforehand, right? You already went through the process of deciding what you're going to keep. You've already gone through the process of where things are going to go. So right now, all you're doing is picking up. Yeah. Yeah. That's all you're doing. Now, if you
with the intention, going back to what you just said, like with the intention of always being able to find what you need when you need it. And that's the thing I have to keep back in my head, that if as long as I'm picking up the book and putting it back where I'm going to find it when I need it, it doesn't necessarily matter the orientation of the book.
Right.
I can free myself from some of that anxiety.
Yes. And I think free yourself from the anxiety that you have to put things away, right? Because things do get on countertops. They do get stacked on back of chairs. Right. And again, just going back to the thought process is you already have a place for these things. So now it's just a matter of taking some time to pay attention and put it back. Yeah. So I'm not in the mindset of every time you use something, you have to put it back. Oh my gosh, I'd be lying if that's what I thought, because, my house gets messy and it gets cluttered and it's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. But you can, maintain it by just paying attention. And that's really what has to happen is basically 2 things. One is you have to pay attention to the clutter. Mm-hmm. And the second is you really want it to create some routines around paying attention so that it doesn't just slip by and then all of a sudden you're back to where you started.
Okay. So let's talk about some of those routines. What does that look like day to day? For my cleanup effort.
Yeah. And again, we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for progress. But one of the greatest routines you can have is doing a daily cleanup. And if it's not a daily cleanup, then, even just 2 or 3 times a week where you just spend 10 to 15 minutes a day putting your stuff away. So if your table has now gotten cluttered with a bunch of stuff, you take 10 to 15 minutes to put it away. Mm-hmm. It's great if you can do it on like kind of a nightly basis, like before you go to bed or something like that. But again, whatever you can do is going to be better than just leaving it and not doing anything.
Okay, I'd like to suggest, if you don't yet consider having teenage children.
Yes.
Because they are very useful in abdicating your own cleanup responsibility under the guise of responsibility themselves.
Right.
Building good say they're very useful tools.
They are very useful tools.
My children have become useful tools.
Yeah. Well, and all children, no matter how young, teenagers or not, get your family involved, get your roommates involved.
Your spouse could also be a useful tool.
Absolutely.
My wife refers to me as a useful tool all the time. I get to work.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
But the point is that it's just making it a habit to pay attention to the messes and, engage yourself, make it fun, put some music on, make a game out of it.
Set your Pomodoro timer, just do one Pomodoro cycle and
you're
just
done.
straighten some things up. Yep.
Yes. And you're doing that a little bit, either again, every day or 3 or 4 times a week, whatever you can do. And it's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
The second thing, this isn't necessarily a habit, but it's definitely something to identify. And those are the hot spots in your home. These are the areas that collect the most stuff. Everybody has them. They're just different. Like, so they may be an island in the kitchen. They may be a table. They may be a certain couch or a floor. I mean, we all have them. Pay attention to what's accumulating and ask yourself, what's going on here? Are these items that don't have a home that you need to actually make that decision? Is there an organizing system that needs to be set up in some way? But, look at those things and really decide, why is this happening and what, maybe it is just taking 10 minutes to clean it up and that's all you have to do. But I want to give you an example of where maybe an organizing system might be helpful. And this is about mail. So this is about paper. So this definitely will probably sit home with a lot of people. If a pile of mail is driving you crazy, and say it's not just a pile, it's several piles all around your home, that's all over the counter. One of the things you can do to set up just sort of a mail, what I call a mail organizing system, is to have one designated spot for your mail. So that every piece of mail that you get comes into the house and it goes into its own basket. What happens here is you're containing the mail. So you're putting it into a container. It's an open container, so it's not like you're filing away and can't ever see it again, but it keeps your counter clear. And once you have the mail all in one spot, then you can decide how you're going to process it, what's going to happen to that mail. And we're going to talk about paper next week and go into more detail about that. But that's just an example of how you can see something that is cluttering up your counter, and now I need to build a system around it.
So I love that. Again, I'm one of those that, like, if for those hotspots, I have to address the hotspots quickly or they go out of control, right? That's one of those sort of muscles you have to build. We have a space in our home. It's been a long time since you've been up here, I know, but we have this kitchen counter, and then there's the kitchen counter surface, and then there's like a little shelf that's slightly lower on one side. And you can tell, like the intention of that little shelf, it's the full length of the counter, and it's kind of in the dining area. And I think that the intention was, you slide up a chair to that little shelf and it becomes a little, breakfast kind of thing. But it's way too low for an adult human to sit at. Like you wouldn't just slide up a chair. It's like an airplane table on your lap. Like, it's not good. And so that shelf has become, like, its singular purpose is clutter, right? That's all it is. We've tried for 20 years to figure out what is the purpose of this stupid shelf, and all it is a place to put stuff when we're clearing it off the table during our hotspot cleanup, which is not a good idea. Like, that's not a great use of that thing. For us, we're getting to the point where, in order to address this hotspot, we need to do some kitchen renovation. Like, we need to actually remove the shelf because we lose stuff in it. It just becomes this place for piles that we never know where things, it just disappear. You'd think this little shelf is about 8 inches deep. Like, we'd be able to stay on top of it, but we lose stuff on that little stupid shelf. So that has become a significant hotspot for us that we have to figure out how to address
and pay attention to it, right?
And pay attention, build some regular routines around it.
And I've talked to other people too who will have they'll have some kind of table, right? As they walk into their house, they'll have like a table where they'll put, their keys and bags or whatever. And that area will also get really cluttered. And one of the solutions I had with a client, this was a long time ago when I was actually a professional organizer, is we decorated the table. So now she had a bowl, like a nice decorative bowl that she could put the keys and the wallet and stuff in, cell phones, whatever. But she also had a plant, and she had like something else, so that you really couldn't physically, you could, but it was harder.
Yeah.
So it was harder.
You're protecting yourself from bad habits.
Right.
Yeah. That's good.
Right. Yeah.
I like that.
One of the things that we have to pay attention to is new purchases, because those decisions have not been made yet, for the most part. So if you are going shopping and you come home, one of the things you want to think about when you're maintaining your space is going back and deciding where are those things going to go so that they don't just sit in a bag on the floor. So that's something to keep in mind. Another strategy is to certainly purge purge on a regular basis. One of the things that we talked about in week 2 is that your sorting never ends. It's something that continues to happen periodically. And so again, to maintain your space, you will want to probably go back to step 2 and review those strategies, and do that at least, once a year, where you go through your home. And you do that in January, where you guys have that annual game that you do,
the daily cleanup,
purge.
right?
Yeah.
Purge one item per number of the day. So by the 31st of January, we're taking 31 items out of the house.
Right. And that's a big deal. I mean, that is maintenance. You are maintaining your home so that it doesn't get, it doesn't have all this stuff all the time when you never are actually paying attention to let go of the stuff that you don't need anymore.
Right.
You can certainly, schedule this time. A lot of times people will do it at the beginning of the year, like what you're doing. A lot of people will do paperwork purges around tax time. So, there's different ways you could attach that habit to something that maybe is already going on. And reward yourself. If you're going to be doing this with your family, again, if you're getting people, your roommates involved in the process, go out to dinner afterwards, or have a special dessert, or do something that, to kind of celebrate the progress that you're making. Cause it takes, it's hard work, right? I mean, this is not easy stuff, or people wouldn't be listening. Let's see. Oh, another strategy that I like in between. So just on day-to-day living, have a donation bag or a box somewhere in your home, whether that's in the garage or somewhere, where when you notice that you have something that you no longer want, you can put it in there. Mm-hmm. So, you're not necessarily going to Goodwill or anywhere that day, but you're just collecting the items as you see them. And that's exciting.
It is exciting. If you have an IKEA near you, go get one of the giant IKEA bags.
Right.
They're perfect for this, because sometimes the things that you think, oh, I should donate that, are larger than like a grocery bag. And these IKEA, those giant blue IKEA bags, you can put blankets in there, you can put pillows in there, you can put small things in there. It is it makes a great like temporary or regular donation bag.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Great idea. And I just have to say this again. We started talking about this at the beginning. The nice thing about being at this stage is that, again, you've already done steps 1, 2, and 3. So when you are doing your yearly purge, it's going to feel different. You're going to have less stuff to go through. You're going to have already practiced this system. You're going to be more familiar with it. You're going to have strategies that you can go back to. You have a toolbox, that you can use. And so it is going to feel different. So I want people to feel confident knowing going into maintenance, knowing and understanding that they can do it and they know how to do it.
Yeah.
Another thing that we want to do when we're paying attention to maintenance is updating our current systems. So if for some reason the mail basket was not working for you, we need to figure out why. Is it too far from when you walk into the door? Maybe you need to put that mail basket closer to the door. Right. If you have a system for your shoes, like we have one place where our shoes go, but many times the shoes don't go to that place. So where are they going? And trying to kind of figure out what do we need to change and tweak. So that's also part of maintenance, is that we all go through different seasons, and we have to think about if this isn't working, if it's not easy, if we can't find what we need, then we've got to rethink that step 3. And that was when we were building where things were going to go.
Shoes are an interesting one, because that's one where, like, we have a shoe cabinet right in our entry hall, and the whole idea is you come in the house, you take your shoes off, and you put them in the cabinet, which is grand unless you're one of the kids who just wears shoes all the time and is doing frequent ins and outs, and they don't really have slip-on shoes. Sometimes the shoes end up in other places. That's one where the system, we have talked about it. Like, is there an improvement we can make to the system? And the answer ultimately was no. The system was important to some of us more than others, but because it was important to some of us, the behavior we had to change was, you need to recognize this is important to some of us, and please respect that.
Right.
by helping us to remember to clean up the shoes. And the real benefit is because it's a system that is important to us, we all were willing to be trained on it. Mm-hmm. And when it gets out of control, we can say, hey, kid number one, your job is shoe shelf, and you know exactly how to do it, even if you aren't somebody who practices it every day. Kid number one happens to have a challenge with shoes, but he absolutely knows how to clean it up when it's time.
Yeah. And that's maintenance right there.
Yeah.
You just described maintenance. Just a quick sort of reminder of habits. A lot of these things are habits, and it really does help to especially like for the daily cleanup, to kind of attach it to something that you're already doing. And so if you already have sort of a nightly routine, add that to the nightly routine or the morning routine or something like that. It will work better because you'll remember it. And it does take some time to practice it, to remember it. So definitely, have it on a checklist or have a reminder or something that you're going to be putting this into your schedule or into your daily routine, I think is important. And again, if you can't do it every day, that's okay. Whatever you can do is going to make a difference. And that's really, what we're aiming for.
Right.
That's it.
That's the big maintenance episode. It sounds so easy.
It's paying attention. It's going back to the steps when you need them and having the confidence that you can do it. And I think the biggest thing too, the biggest takeaway is that, just think about what's good enough. And I go back to the bookshelf that we talked about. Is it okay that the books are different, whether they're horizontal or vertical? Yeah. It might be, it might just be good enough.
It is. It's a great reminder too. It's a great reminder for the rest of the things that are causing me pain, as I gaze longingly into my closet. It is, it's a working closet, and I need to give myself permission that it continues to be a working closet as long as I can find what I need when I need it.
That's right.
Thank you, Nikki Kinzer. Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to this show. We appreciate you hanging out with us today. And make sure to check in next week. If you haven't listened to the past 3 episodes, get caught up. Next week, we're going to take on paper. So thank you, everybody, for your time and your attention. And we'll catch you next week right here on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast.